The massive crystalline chamber stretched endlessly upward, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall. The Galactic Council met here once every solar cycle, and today the air buzzed with anticipation and amusement. Ambassador Kreltar of the Vorthan Empire stood at the center of the chamber, his forearms gesturing dramatically as holographic displays flickered around him. The 12 ancient species that ruled the galaxy leaned forward in their floating seats, eager to hear about the latest cosmic curiosity that had stumbled into their awareness. Honored counselors, Kreltar began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia, I present to you the most entertaining discovery of this age, a species so primitive, so laughably backward, that they have requested, he paused for effect, membership in our Galactic Council. The chamber erupted in a symphony of alien laughter. Councillor Velnari's tentacles writhed with such violent mirth that bioluminescent spots along her body flashed in rapid succession. The crystalline beings of Zerion chimed like broken bells, while the gas-dwelling Nephilim created swirling patterns of colored vapor that indicated their amusement. They call their world Earth, Kreltar continued, his voice dripping with disdain as new holographic images materialized. A small blue planet appeared, spinning slowly above the assembly. A single world, councillors, one planet with barely 3 billion inhabitants who still burn fossil fuels and fight wars over pieces of land. Councillor Thexmore, his scaled reptilian, features glistening under the chamber's light, leaned forward with interest. Surely you jest, Ambassador. No species has been so primitive since the dawn of galactic civilization. I assure you the jest is reality itself, Kreltar replied, waving his hand to change the display. Observe their technological achievements, chemical rockets that barely escape their own atmosphere, fusion drives so inefficient they would take centuries to reach even their nearest star. They have managed to reach their own moon, quite the achievement for such young mammals. The hologram showed crude metal contraptions, belching fire and smoke, tiny specks against the vastness of space. Councillor Velnari's tentacles writhed with fresh waves of mirth. And they request membership, protection under galactic law. These insects have existed for what, a few hundred years in space? Less than that, chimed in Councillor Zefkran, his mechanical voice buzzing with electronic static. According to our scouts, their first interstellar vessel launched merely 50 years ago. 50 years. My personal ship is older than their entire space program. The council chamber erupted in fresh waves of laughter that echoed off the crystalline walls. These humans were nothing, a cosmic joke compared to civilizations that had mastered faster than light travel when Earth was still a molten ball of rock cooling in the void. Show them their military capabilities, suggested Councillor Ythara, her gossamer wings fluttering with anticipation. Kreltar's expression grew even more amused as he complied. The hologram shifted to show human spacecraft, tiny angular vessels that looked more like flying scrap metal than proper warships. Their largest military vessel carries fewer than 1,000 crew members. Their weapons are kinetic projectiles and primitive energy beams that would barely scratch the paint on a hegemony patrol ship. How many worlds do they control? Asked Councillor Morthak, his rocky exterior grinding as he shifted in his seat. Worlds? Kreltar laughed. They have established small colonies on exactly 7 planets in their local system. 7, my own. Empire controls over 10,000 inhabited worlds across 47 systems. The absurdity of it all sent the Council into another fit of laughter. The idea that such a primitive species would dare approach them for membership was beyond comprehension. Perhaps we should teach them their place, suggested Councillor Thexmore, his scaled features twisting into what passed for a smile among his species. A small demonstration of galactic power should suffice. Show them what happens when insects try to fly with the eagles. Councillor Velnari's tentacles coiled with satisfaction. I agree. The hegemony has been too long without proper exercise. A brief show of force would remind not just these humans, but all the lesser species of the natural order. Motion carried, declared the Council's AI moderator, its voice resonating through the chamber. 3 hegemony dreadnoughts will be dispatched to the Sol system. Orders: disable human space installations, force immediate surrender, and remind these upstart mammals where they belong in the cosmic hierarchy. As the council session concluded, none of the ancient beings bothered to look too closely at the intelligence reports. They had seen 1,000 primitive species before, and they all ended the same way, kneeling before galactic power or being swept aside by the tide of progress. Within hours, 3 massive hegemony dreadnoughts, each stretching over 5 kilometers, in length and bristling with weapons that could crack planets, received their orders. Their crews, veteran warriors who had conquered systems across the galaxy, prepared for what they assumed would be the easiest assignment of their careers. They were about to learn that assumptions could be deadly. Captain Li Wu-jin gripped the command chair of the UEF Determination as 3 massive shapes materialized against the starfield. The alien dreadnoughts were unlike anything in human military doctrine, sleek, predatory vessels that dwarfed even Earth's largest space stations. Each ship stretched over 5 kilometers from bow to stern, their hulls gleaming with an otherworldly metal that seemed to absorb light itself. "Contact bearing 270, reported Lieutenant Yang Da-un from her sensor station, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 3 vessels, unknown configuration, energy readings. "Are off the charts, Captain." The bridge of the Determination buzzed with controlled tension. Through the reinforced viewports, the crew could see the alien ships moving in perfect formation, their surfaces bristling with weapon emplacements that glowed with ominous energy. These weren't explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors. "All stations, this is command." Admiral Park Min-ho's voice crackled over the comm system, reaching every human vessel in the Sol system. "Implement Protocol 7. Show them what happens when someone threatens our home. Protocol 7. The phrase sent a chill through the bridge crew. It meant total war, no quarter given, no surrender accepted. Every human ship, from the smallest patrol craft to the mightiest battlecruiser, would fight to the death to protect Earth. The alien commander aboard the lead dreadnought, Fleet Marshal Korovaks, watched the human response with growing confusion. His tactical display showed dozens of small vessels moving toward his formation, but they were so tiny compared to his ships that they barely registered as threats. Some were obviously civilian vessels, cargo haulers, mining ships, even passenger liners hastily converted with weapon mounts. "They're actually going to fight," his tactical officer reported, mandibles clicking with amusement. "Shall we disable their weapons systems first or simply destroy them outright?" Korovak studied the display with the confidence of a predator who had never known defeat. "Let them come. We'll crush them quickly and move on to the real objective." But the humans weren't fighting the way the aliens expected. Instead of forming battle lines or attempting to match the dreadnought's firepower, they scattered like a swarm of angry insects, moving in seemingly random patterns that made targeting impossible. Captain Kim So-ra's squadron came in from the starboard flank, her fighters weaving between the alien ship's weapon arcs with suicidal precision. "Fox Squadron, this is lead," she transmitted over the tactical net. "Hit them where they can't see us coming." Her pilots responded with the kind of desperate courage that only humans possessed when their backs were against the wall. The small fighter craft dove beneath the alien formation, exploiting a blind spot in their defensive grid that no sane military force would have attempted to use. The aliens had built their ships to fight other capital vessels in traditional fleet engagements. Their weapons were massive energy cannons designed to penetrate heavy armor at long range, but the human fighters were too small, too fast, and too unpredictable for systems designed to track objects the size of space stations. Commander Choi Jae-sung's heavy cruisers approached from a different angle entirely, their kinetic weapons spitting streams of metal slugs at incredible velocities. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, barely registered the physical projectiles until they were already tearing through hull plating. "Their shields are frequency-based," Lieutenant Yang Da-un reported, her fingers flying over her console as she analyzed the enemy defenses. "The energy barriers don't affect solid matter moving at sufficient velocity." The tactical situation was rapidly becoming a nightmare for the alien forces. What should have been a simple demonstration of power had turned into a chaotic melee, where their technological advantages meant nothing. Human ships darted between the dreadnoughts like predators, attacking much larger prey, coordinating their attacks with a precision that spoke of years of practice. "Impossible," Korvax muttered as damage reports flooded his command center. "They're primitives. How are they?" His question was answered by an explosion that shook his flagship. A human torpedo, little more than a missile with a primitive nuclear warhead, had somehow penetrated his ship's point defense systems and detonated against the hull. The damage was minimal, but the implications were terrifying. What the Galactic Council's intelligence had missed was catastrophic. Humans didn't just have one world anymore. They had colonized 17 systems, and their fleet was scattered across dozens of installations. The ships defending Earth were just the beginning. Reinforcements were already jumping into the system from colonies the aliens didn't even know existed. "Sir, we're receiving reports from across the fleet," the alien tactical officer reported, his voice cracking with disbelief. "The humans have been preparing for this kind of fight. They know our weaknesses." Indeed they did. For 50 years, humanity had studied every piece of alien technology they could get their hands on, reverse engineering captured probes and analyzing energy signatures from deep space. They had built their entire military doctrine around one terrifying assumption: someday someone bigger and stronger would come to take what was theirs. By the time Fleet Marshal Korvax realized his mistake, 2 of his dreadnoughts were crippled hulks, venting atmosphere and debris into space. The third was broadcasting desperate retreat signals, its crew abandoning ship as human boarding parties cut through the hull with plasma torches. The demonstration had become a humiliation that would echo across the galaxy. The emergency session of the United Earth Federation convened just 12 hours after the alien attack. President Yoon Soo-min stood at the podium in the Capitol building on New Geneva, her usually calm demeanor replaced by something far more dangerous: cold, calculated fury. Behind her, massive screens displayed the wreckage of the alien dreadnoughts, floating in Earth's orbit, a stark reminder of what had just transpired. "Citizens of humanity," she began, her voice carrying across every human settlement from the mining colonies of Alpha Centauri to the research stations orbiting distant pulsars. "Yesterday, representatives of the so-called Galactic Council decided to teach us our place in their cosmic order. They sent 3 warships to our home, expecting us to surrender without a fight." The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing the steel in her eyes that had served her well during the colonial wars 20 years earlier. "They came to our home. They threatened our families. They believed we would kneel." Her voice hardened with each word. They were wrong. Across 17 star systems, humans stopped what they were doing to listen. On the agricultural worlds of Kepler 442, farmers left their fields. In the asteroid mining belts of Wolf 359, crews gathered around communication arrays. Even the deep space explorers at the edge of known space tuned in to hear what their species leader had to say. "The Galactic Council believes we are insects," President Yoon continued. "Primitives who stumbled into space by accident. They see our small numbers and think we are weak. They look at our simple ships and assume we are helpless." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Let me be very clear about something. They have made the last mistake they will ever make." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the broadcast, recruitment centers across human space were flooded with volunteers. The Martian Defense Corps, previously focused on protecting shipping lanes from pirates, began converting their patrol ships into military vessels. The Deep Space Mining Guild offered their entire fleet of heavy haulers to the war effort. Their massive cargo holds perfect for carrying troops and supplies. But the real transformation was happening in the research laboratories scattered across human colonies. Dr. Kang Hyejin's team at the Advanced Technologies Institute had been working around the clock since the first pieces of alien wreckage were brought in. Her laboratory, normally a quiet place of theoretical research, now buzzed with desperate activity. "The energy matrices are fascinating," she explained to her exhausted team as they huddled around holographic displays showing alien technology in 3 dimensions. "They've been using the same basic principles for thousands of years. No innovation, no adaptation, just the same old solutions applied with bigger and bigger power sources. Her assistant, Dr. Park Hyun-woo, looked up from his analysis station with bloodshot eyes. Their shield frequencies are completely fixed, Doctor. They don't adapt to incoming weapons at all. It's like they've never faced an enemy that could... Think creatively. Dr. Kang nodded grimly. That's exactly what they've never faced. These aliens have been so dominant for so long that they've forgotten how to fight a real war. They've forgotten how to innovate under pressure. She gestured to the alien components spread across her workbench. What took them centuries to develop, we're reverse engineering in days. The breakthrough came on the third day. Dr. Kang's team discovered that alien technology relied heavily on quantum resonance patterns that were incredibly sophisticated, but also incredibly predictable. Once humans understood the basic principles, they could not only counter alien weapons, but improve upon their design. We can build better versions of their own technology, Dr. Kang reported to the Emergency Military Council. Their shields, their weapons, their propulsion systems, all of it can be enhanced using human engineering principles they've never considered. General Nam Dong-wook, commander of the United Earth Defense Forces, studied the reports with the eye of a career soldier who had fought in every major conflict of the past 30 years. Doctor, can you mass-produce these improvements? Already underway, General. We've sent the specifications to every manufacturing facility in human space. Within 2 weeks, we'll have retrofitted half our fleet with alien-enhanced weapon systems. The General smiled for the first time since the crisis began. Good, because we're not going to fight their kind of war. He turned to address his staff officers, many of whom had been recalled from retirement or pulled from civilian posts. Listen carefully. We're smaller, faster, and we think differently than these aliens. We don't fight massive fleet battles, where bigger ships win. We fight guerrilla campaigns where creativity and adaptability matter more than raw power. Across human space, the transformation was remarkable. Colonies that had been feuding over trade rights and territorial disputes suddenly found themselves working together with unprecedented cooperation. The Outer Rim settlements, previously considered backward frontier posts, became crucial supply depots and staging areas. Even the notorious smugglers and pirates, who operated in the grey areas between systems, offered their services to the war effort. On Proxima Colony, Governor Lee Chang-min received a message from his counterpart on Tau Ceti that perfectly captured the mood. They picked a fight with one human world. Now they get to fight all of them. The aliens had awakened something they didn't understand. Not just human military capability, but human unity in the face of existential threat. The species that had spent centuries fighting each other over resources and ideology suddenly remembered that they were all human first, and everything else second. The message was clear across 17 star systems. Threaten one human world. And you threatened them all. The assembled alien armada stretched across space like a metallic constellation of death. Over 3,000 warships from 12 different civilizations had gathered at the staging point near the Vortan homeworld, their combined firepower capable of reducing entire star systems to cosmic dust. Fleet Admiral Koroneth of the Hegemony stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the vast formation through reinforced viewports that had witnessed the conquest of 100 worlds. The largest fleet in galactic history, his tactical officer reported with obvious pride. No force in the known universe could stand against us. Koroneth nodded with satisfaction. The humans would see this armada approaching and surrender. Immediately. The war would be over before it truly began, and the galaxy would remember why the ancient species ruled while the young ones served. They were catastrophically wrong. The first sign that something had gone terribly awry came when Commander Seo Jiwoo's raider squadron struck a Vorthan supply convoy 3 systems behind the main fleet. The attack should have been impossible. The convoy was protected by 2 heavy cruisers and traveling through the most secure space lanes in the galaxy. Yet somehow, human ships had not only reached them, but destroyed the entire formation without a single survivor to report what had happened. "How did they get past our patrols?" demanded Admiral Yethkara of the crystalline Concordat, her translucent form shimmering with agitation. Our sensor networks should have detected any human approach. The answer came 12 hours later when security footage from the convoy's final moments was recovered from a damaged probe. The human ships weren't human ships at all. They were captured alien vessels, perfectly disguised and broadcasting the correct identification codes until the moment they opened fire. Commander Cog Wu had spent months studying alien communication, protocols, learning how their ships identified each other, understanding their tactical doctrines. Her raiders moved through alien space like ghosts, using the enemy's own technology against them. They struck supply lines, communication relays, and isolated outposts with surgical precision, always vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. But the raiders were just the beginning. Captain Lim Tae-hyun had taken the concept of unconventional warfare to its logical extreme. His specialty was turning the galaxy's own infrastructure into weapons. Civilian freighters, their cargo holds packed with exotic matter, and their engines, overcharged beyond all safety limits, became kinetic missiles of unimaginable destructive power. "Target the fleet anchorage at Nexus 7, Captain Lim transmitted to his suicide squadron, their voices calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. "Maximum acceleration on my mark." The alien commanders watched in horror as a dozen human freighters suddenly broke from civilian traffic patterns and began accelerating directly toward their refueling station. By the time they realized what was happening, the ships had reached nearly 10% of light speed. The impact when they hit was visible from 3 star systems away. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Thexmore as damage reports flooded in. They turned cargo ships into relativistic weapons. The energy release was equivalent to a small star going supernova. The war that was supposed to last days stretched into weeks as human tactics grew increasingly unpredictable. Major Oh Min-jong's infiltration teams had somehow managed to penetrate alien installations deep within their own territory, sabotaging critical systems from within. Her soldiers moved like shadows through alien facilities, using stolen uniforms and forged credentials to reach the heart of enemy operations. "Security breach on levels 7 through 12, reported the station commander at the Hegemony's primary weapons depot. "Unknown hostiles have accessed the main reactor chamber. The explosion that followed destroyed not just the depot, but 3 nearby ships that were being resupplied. Major O and her team had used the aliens' own antimatter containment systems against them, turning a routine maintenance operation into a catastrophic chain reaction. They fight like demons," Admiral Velkrim reported to the Galactic Council, before his flagship was destroyed by another human innovation, fighter craft that had somehow been launched from inside a seemingly harmless asteroid. "No honor, no rules, just pure savagery. What the aliens called savagery, humans called adaptation. Every defeat taught them something new about alien weaknesses. Every victory made them stronger and more confident. The war that was supposed to last days stretched into months, then years, with human forces proving impossible to predict or contain. Human engineers studied every piece of alien wreckage, every captured weapon, every damaged system. They learned to build better versions of alien technology, then used that knowledge to create entirely new weapons that the aliens had never imagined. Stealth systems that made ships invisible to alien sensors, weapon frequencies that bypassed alien shields completely. Electronic warfare suites that could take control of alien vessels and turn them against their own fleets. Admiral Lee Jo-yeon coordinated the final push from her command ship, a converted luxury liner that had been transformed into a mobile command center. Around her, a fleet of converted civilian ships and purpose-built warships moved in perfect harmony, their crews a mix of former military officers, civilian volunteers, and even reformed pirates who had joined the fight for humanity's survival. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," she transmitted across the tactical network. "The enemy has superior numbers and superior technology, but they've forgotten something important. They've forgotten how to adapt. The aliens' superior technology meant nothing when humans refused to fight by their rules. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the greatest advantage isn't having the biggest ships or the most powerful weapons. It's being willing to do whatever it takes to protect what matters most." The ancient crystalline chamber that had once echoed with cruel laughter now stood in absolute silence. The towering walls, which had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations over 10,000 years, seemed to hold their breath as Admiral Park Min-ho stepped forward to accept the formal surrender documents. His uniform, still bearing scorch marks from the final battle at Nexus Prime, was a stark contrast to the ornate robes and ceremonial armor of the defeated alien dignitaries. On behalf of the United Earth Federation and all human colonies, Admiral Park announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I accept the unconditional surrender of the remaining Galactic Council forces." He paused, looking directly at the former rulers of the galaxy. The age of tyranny is over. 2 years had passed since these same aliens had laughed at humanity's request for membership. 2 years since they had dismissed humans as primitive insects, unworthy of consideration. Now the mighty Galactic Council itself was extinct, its fleets scattered, its worlds either conquered or begging for mercy. Former Fleet Admiral Koroneth of the Hegemony, once the terror of 100 star systems, knelt before the human admiral, with his ceremonial sword laid at his feet. The proud Vorthan ambassadors, who had once commanded respect across the galaxy, now waited nervously for permission to speak. The crystalline beings of Zerion, whose ancient wisdom had guided galactic policy for millennia, sat silent and defeated. "This chamber has seen enough surrenders," President Yoon Soo-min declared as she entered the hall, flanked by representatives from dozens of species that had lived under alien oppression for centuries. "Today, we begin something entirely new." The Giwop transformation of the chamber was symbolic of the greater change sweeping across the galaxy. Where once 12 thrones had dominated the space, representing the ruling species, now hundreds of seats were being installed. Representatives from every known species, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, would have a voice in the new order. "The Galactic Democratic Assembly is now in session," President Yoon announced, her words broadcast across every inhabited world in the galaxy. Every species, every world, every voice will be heard as equals. The former council members sat in stunned silence as species they had oppressed for millennia took their seats alongside humans. The insectoid Zephyrians, who had been used as slave labor in alien mining operations, now sat next to their former masters as equals. The plant-based Verdani, whose worlds had been strip-mined for resources, were given voting rights equal to the most powerful civilizations. Ambassador Kreltar of the Vorthan Empire, the same alien who had mocked humanity's request for membership, now approached the human delegation with obvious desperation. "Honored humans," he began, his voice shaking, "the Vorthan Empire humbly requests the right to establish trade relations with your colonies. We offer our most advanced technologies in exchange for basic foodstuffs and medical supplies." The irony was not lost on anyone present. The proud conquerors who had once demanded tribute from weaker species were now begging for the right to trade with the very humans they had tried to crush. Captain Kim So-ra, now promoted to admiral after her heroic actions during the war, stood to address the assembly. The chamber fell silent as the young woman who had led some of the most daring raids in military history prepared to speak. "We didn't fight this war to rule the galaxy," she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made her legendary among human forces. "We fought it to free the galaxy. There's a difference." Her words resonated through the chamber with the weight of absolute truth. Around the vast hall, former enemies nodded in understanding as they began to grasp what humanity truly represented. The transformation extended far beyond the political realm. Throughout the galaxy, the symbols of the old order were being repurposed for peaceful ends. The massive hegemony dreadnoughts, once symbols of galactic tyranny, were being converted into hospital ships and research vessels. Their weapon bays now housed medical facilities, capable of treating entire populations. Their armor plating was being removed to make room for scientific laboratories and cultural exchange centers. Dr. Kang Hae-jin's research teams were working with alien scientists to share technological advances that had been hoarded by the ruling species for millennia. "We're seeing innovations that would have taken centuries under the old system," she reported to the assembly. "When knowledge is shared freely, instead of controlled by a few, the entire galaxy benefits. The economic changes were equally dramatic. Trade routes that had been monopolized by the Council's favored species were now open to all. Small civilizations that had been economically strangled by alien policies were experiencing unprecedented prosperity. The galaxy's wealth, previously concentrated in the hands of 12 species, was being distributed based on merit and need rather than political power. As the months passed, even the most skeptical observers had to admit that the new system was working. Conflicts that had raged for centuries were being resolved through negotiation rather than conquest. Technological advances were being shared rather than weaponized. Species that had been enemies for millennia were learning to work together toward common goals. Former Councillor Velnari, her tentacles now dulled with age and defeat, approached President Yoon during a recess in the assembly proceedings. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "How did you know that freedom would make the galaxy stronger rather than weaker?" President Yoon smiled with the wisdom of someone who had seen both war and peace. "Because that's what we learned about ourselves. When humans stopped fighting each other and started working together, we became capable of things we never imagined. The same is true for the galaxy." As the session continued with former enemies working together to build something better, one truth became clear to all who witnessed it. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or their guns or their tactical innovations. It was their absolute refusal to accept that anyone anywhere had the right to make them or anyone else kneel. The galaxy would never be the same. The end.